Stop running down the meh and mundane hallways of life and tap into the magical. My name is Michelle Shutter. I am a life and leadership coach for women and host of the Life Coaching Classroom podcast. I'd like to welcome you to Life Coaching Classroom, where we walk with you in the hallways of life so you can align to the beautiful expansiveness of your true self through reconnection, reinvention, and rejuvenation. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to class. Welcome back to another episode on the Life Coaching Classroom podcast. My name is Michelle Shutter, and I am a life and leadership coach for women. And I am so glad that you invested some time into yourself today, because today, episode 48, is all about limitation fighting. Oh yeah, let's get those boxing gloves on today, because we are going to fight for those limitations. Sounds really silly, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. So this episode is a perfect example of us living in the meh, the mundane, and the mediocrity. So what would be different if we could shift this thought process, this limitation fighting, and hop into the magical classroom? Well, let's dive in, because 48 is just all about that. It's all about fighting for our limitations. And it sounds so ridiculous on so many levels. Like, why on earth would we want to fight for our limitations? Are we even aware of the limitations? Are we even aware that we're fighting for them? No, most of the time we're not. And that's why it sounds so silly. It sounds so funny. It sounds so ridiculous. But yet we have to step back and think about our thought patterns. So I want you to think about a thought that you have about anything in your life that you don't think you could do, anything that is holding you back, anything that is limiting you in some way from going up the next step on the ladder, to evolving, to expanding in any sort of way. Okay. So hold on to that thought. And what happens is we let this thought brew in us. And we let this thought sink into a level that becomes solid within us, that is cemented in. Now, how does it do that? Well, it does that because we believe that our limitations are the norm for us. We can look at our friends, we can look on social media, we can look at our neighbor down the street, and they may or may not have the same thought about the experience we want to experience, and they're able to do it, and yet we're not, because we're limiting ourselves in some way. And so we've accepted that this limitation is exclusive to us, right? Like, it's our norm. This is the absolute truth. And what we do then is we look for outside evidence to prove our thought right, to prove that thought, to cement it, I guess, even further. And when that evidence shows up, and are you surprised that the evidence is showing up? Because that's the only thought you're thinking. When that evidence shows up, it again cements it even deeper within us. And the deeper that it gets cemented within us, the more familiar it becomes. So when something new comes up, or we want to try something different, or a change, and if that doesn't align with our limiting belief, what do? We fight against it. We fight against that change. We fight against the new. We fight for the better that we could have in our life. We discount the possibility that we could live into that experience. And essentially, we're just fighting for the limitation. So let that sink in for a second. When we are fighting for the limitation, it is holding us back. When we are fighting for the limitation, it doesn't allow us to fully experience life in the way we were meant to experience life. When we are fighting for the limitation, not only does it hold us back, but it also doesn't give the people that we come in contact with on a daily basis the experience to experience us in our fullest expression, in our fullest potential. So is it worth it to fight for our limitations? Here's what happens, and I'm going to give you kind of some signs here that you can reflect on to see if indeed this is showing up for you. When we fight for our limitations, a sign that we are fighting for our limitations is exhaustion. It's overwhelm. It's that suffering, that sacrifice. And those are all signs that we've disconnected from our true self, from our heart, from our unlimited being that we are. We are not limited people. We are not limited women. We are unlimited. However, over the course of time, what we've allowed to happen is that we've allowed these thought patterns to creep in, to sink in, to cement within us. And we've gone out time and time again seeking the evidence to prove ourselves right with this thought. Many times we also fight for limitations because someone that we shared our desire with, someone that we shared our excitement with, someone that we shared a new goal with, they didn't come back to us with the excitement that we had hoped for. They didn't come back with the excitement that was super supportive with us, that we felt all warm and fuzzy around. Essentially, they may or may not have used this word, but they said no to us in a way. They said no, and that no, even if they didn't say it out loud, we could feel it from their energy. We could feel it from their body language, their gestures. But that no landed in us and caused us to believe again that there was a limitation. And this was just more evidence that came up that supported that limiting thought. But essentially, what you were doing is holding up a mirror to that person, and unfortunately, that person just unloaded their garbage on you. They unloaded their fear on you. They unloaded their fear of rejection, their fear of failure. So whose limitation are we fighting for? Are we fighting for our limitations, or were we really fighting for their limitation? But we internalized it and took it on as if it was our limitation. Right? I know. I feel you. I get you. I understand you. What if we didn't have to fight for our limitations? What if we could prove ourselves wrong that we didn't have to fight for these limitations? Because I'm here to tell you, if you don't have the belief right now that you don't have to fight for your limitations, I want you to borrow my belief, because I am certain, without a doubt, that there is no reason we have to fight for our limitations. Why don't we fight for our unlimited possibilities? Because it exists. Every desire that is in our heart, it is there for us to achieve. It is there for us to bring into reality. But we can't do it with limiting thoughts, with limiting beliefs. How does that land for you? What's showing up for you in what I just shared with you today? Because I want to extend an invitation to you to our November life coaching unit study, where we are going to, the topic of that is prove yourself wrong. And yes, we are going to dive into this fighting for our limitations, this whole limitation fighting and getting the boxing gloves out and fighting with ourselves. And I have a great tool for you within that unit study that is going to create some awareness for you to start to shift, to move away from this fight. I would love for you to join us, and you can do that by saving your seat at lifecoachingclassroom.com/unit. I will be recording it because in the United States, that is Thanksgiving week, and I understand that people may have a lot of things going on. However, you cannot get access to it unless you register. So again, fighting for your limitations. Is it worth it? Perhaps it's time that you prove yourself wrong. Again, register for our free, did I mention that? There's no charge to this. You get to experience life coaching in this 3-day event. And it's about, I would say, 30 to 45 minutes each day. But again, you can get the recordings if you can't make it live. Save your seat at lifecoachingclassroom.com/unit. And I will see you in class. Have you joined our monthly unit study? If not, you better head on over and reserve your seat at lifecoachingclassroom.com/unit. The unit study gives you an opportunity to experience life coaching at no charge. Again, register and get all the details at lifecoachingclassroom.com/unit. I do have a favor. Could you take a moment to share this podcast and Life Coaching Classroom with your besties? Perhaps they too are tired of running down the meh and mundane hallways of life. Let's give them a little spark in their day. Finally, I'd be so grateful if you take a minute to review the podcast. The reviews definitely help to spread the podcast to more women. Thank you. I so appreciate you, and I will see you in class.